Today's show is brought to you by StreamTech Drift Boats, the world's most versatile drift boat. Find them at www.streamtechboats.com. I kind of feel bad for these people, but at the same time I don't because they're stupid.
Don't see a circle around yourself, just start pissing everywhere.
Oh, I hate the Dutch.
Welcome to our country. So.
She doesn't really look Canadian. She looks almost American. Just insulted all of Canada.
Oh, every time I see something, you got If I'd known that before, I would have just interspaced every other sentence with something horrible.
Well, I haven't felt my feet since I sat down in the chair.
Can you see your feet, though?
No. I'd rather do anything else on the planet than go tip a cow over.
How about Canada? Is there any stream access issues up in Canada?
Nobody cares.
Not very much.
Kids, if you don't understand that joke, ask your parents.
Evan, Derek?
Yeah.
Oh, correct. Here it comes.
Your flies are open.
Thanks.
Grab hold of your flies. This is a podcast for nymphers, strippers, swingers, and dry fly guys. It's the show that brings you stories, instruction, and conservation from three guys who live it every day. This is the Open Fly.
Happy Sports Ball Day, everybody.
And we're back.
We got a lot of sports ball shirts in the studio today.
Yeah. Seahawks.
Yeah, that.
We've actually been places, too, since we've been gone. So
have we?
Which is kind of nice.
I guess I have. I went fishing a few times.
Yeah?
Yeah, imagine that.
When were we last here? I don't think I've been anywhere.
No. I don't know. Probably a month ago.
Yeah.
We're doing this once a month right now, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think we did the August show, and this is our September show.
Is this number 20?
It is. Happy anniversary, everybody.
Ooh.
Number 20.
Number 21, that
Yeah.
means we can drink on the air.
And that was part of why I wanted to get you guys presents for the show. I got presents on the way, and they're supposed to get here yesterday. It was going to enhance the show, make it a lot more interesting, and they didn't show up. So
Open Fly Podcast thongs.
the show is ruined.
Empty promises.
Yeah, the show's ruined. I almost called the show off today because of it, but I guess Derek has some really important stuff to talk about. This is going to be a real serious show. Isn't that right, Derek?
Well, it could be a serious show. It just depends.
All right.
All depends.
Seems like it's going to be a serious show.
What kind of a mood are we in today?
Very serious.
Very serious.
Yep, very serious.
Focused?
Yep.
Focused.
Yeah.
Locked in.
Locked in?
Laser sights.
Stretched out?
Yeah. What else has been going on in the last month?
I got a new shotgun a couple of days ago
Cool.
for an upcoming trip to Montana, so it's a little bit of bear protection.
Nice. I went and slayed a bunch of steelhead last week, so that was cool.
Very nice.
I'm going to go do it again next week.
Very nice.
I almost landed my biggest Yakima River fish
That was
2 weeks ago.
I was on pins and needles reading through that Facebook post. I thought for sure that it was going to be something really great.
It got close. I mean, my net man saw the fish, and he probably inflated it to make me feel bad.
So show me with your hands how big you think this fish was.
I think that fish...
Hold it up closer to the microphone.
Yeah.
There you go.
I think it was 20 easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be 20.
Yeah.
Nice.
Heavy fish on a 4-weight.
This is a breakthrough for you.
Yeah.
I mean, 20-inch fish, almost to the net.
Almost.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did it touch the rim of the net and then break off?
No, he didn't. It was even with him as far as 30 feet downstream off the boat where I was fishing, and he was standing in knee-deep water, and he wasn't stabbing at the fish. Mm-hmm. It got close to him, but then something happened. That barbless hook gave.
Well, what's funny is this summer, until this last trip last week, I was on a 7-fish streak of losing steelhead. 7 fish in a row, lost them, and that was in 3 different rivers. And actually, the trip last week when I started the day at 7 fish, lost my first 3 of the day, and then landed the next 7. So I got to 10 fish total, and then landed the next 7. So
On plugs?
No, I don't think I've ever caught a steelhead on a plug.
Were you center pinning? It's okay.
Oh,
it's
no.
Yes.
Go to a commercial break.
So, yeah, well, we did a lot of swinging that day.
Oh, very good.
Welcome to the Open Pin,
Yeah.
a subsidiary of
No, it did a lot of swinging, but the problem is lately I'm only able to spay cast from the right side of the river. On river left, I have a nerve in my left elbow that pops out of place when I use it wrong. So the spay casting motion when I do the bottom handle pull in that pop, it can pop that nerve out of place. And
Which shoulder?
It's my left elbow.
Your left elbow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
So I can really only fish on the left side of the river for about 5 minutes, and then it gets really painful. And then
Can't you just change up your casting stroke to cack-handed?
or I can change up to center pin.
Yeah, there you go. Do you squeal audibly when the nerve slips out of place?
I have.
Yeah.
It hurts. Well, it's more like it goes numb and like paralyzed for a couple minutes.
Cool.
It's actually the nerve that's AKA your funny bone, that one. That's the one that I blew the fascia out in that elbow a couple years ago, and it's been getting really bad lately.
There's nothing funny about it.
No, I wasn't laughing.
I think that scream might sound a little bit funny.
Mm-hmm. Maybe one of these days we'll have me spaycast on the show and see what happens.
Especially if there's any squatches in the area.
Yeah.
It might.
Yeah, there's like a surgery I can get for it, but that costs money. And
Well, your insurance.
we could, or I got a better idea. We could make like the open fly bucket challenge and donate
Raise money?
Yeah, like we. I mean, we can't copy exactly, but I mean, we could try to one up them. If we can get our listeners to pour a bucket of boiling water on their head.
No, how about a bucket of boiling was that's ridiculous, but how about a bucket of ice water down your open fly?
Oh, there you go, right there. Yeah.
No, I like the boiling water idea. It'd be much more entertaining to watch that video.
Yeah, but that's not a way to sustain listeners.
How about a half gallon of chocolate milk down your shorts for support of Evan's surgery?
Yeah, there we go.
That's not a bad idea.
Tag 3 friends. Send $100.
There's got to be some sort of good marketing slogan we can come up with that.
Hey, it worked for the other guys. I mean, they raised $75 million. If we can get like $75, I'd be doing all right.
You can get pretty good surgery for $75.
I'm going to Mexico.
Go to the veterinarian.
Yeah, there's a couple of those here in town. There's no real surgeons in town, but there's a couple of vets.
Hey, nerves are nerves, right? I mean,
we got horses and dogs out here, and that's all we got doctors for in Duval.
Yeah. Well,
just put yourself in a horse costume and gallop on down to the veterinarian and say,
get one of those horse masks and walk on in.
You have one of those horse masks, don't you?
Yeah. No, I don't. A friend of mine did. But anyway.
Well, okay, so we've got that all worked out.
Yeah.
Well, good luck with your surgery, and make yourself a video of yourself pouring chocolate milk down your pants, and challenge your friends, and send your money to the Open Fly podcast for Evan.
Yep.
Or just send your money to the Open Fly podcast.
Yeah,
we'll make sure that Evan gets it.
Yeah, we've still got a lot of devoted listeners doing that and helping us keep the lights on and all the hosting and all that stuff. So we thank you.
We had, speaking of dedicated listeners, we had a listener on the Twitters make mention of some question he had asked and never got an answer.
Oh.
And I managed the Twitter account, so I replied and said, I have no idea what you're talking about, or something to that effect. And he mentioned that he had sent in an email and never got an answer. So I told him, I said, we hadn't been recording regularly, so maybe we'll read his question on the air today.
I've been really bad about keeping up on that email address. So it's been a busy 2 months for work, so I can only have like 3 emails at a time that I can check. And then adding the Open Fly one on top of that just makes it real busy.
That's a good way to lose listeners.
No, it's fine.
In many ways, I think it's a pretty crowded space because I offered some swag for a fly tying and naming contest, and nobody replied.
You're not supposed to tell people that.
Well, that's the truth.
Oh.
And today's show is about the truth.
It is.
You can't handle the truth.
Well, we'll see if we can handle it or not.
All right. I'm very excited.
We're going to be talking about Bristol Bay again because there's an important...
Not that again.
Well, there's September 19th is the final deadline for public comment. Mm-hmm. And so we're 2 weeks from that, just about.
But it sounds like we're going to talk about it from a little bit of a different angle.
We are. We're going to talk about from the commercial seafood aspect of it. Mm-hmm. So where you get your fish, how it's marketed to you, what it means, what a wild-caught fish means versus what it doesn't, and sustainability. So it's a serious show, but we've also got a really good guide stories coming up as well, and I say that every time, but we do.
Yeah. Cool. So have we done a show since the thing up in Canada happened?
It had already happened.
You had it?
Yeah, the shit show at Mount Poly.
Yeah, the Mount Poly deal. How's things going with that? I haven't seen too many.
Well, they're no longer concerned about that because there's a teacher strike in BC, apparently.
So that's what took over the news?
Yeah.
So the fish are fine?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
the teachers
There are not 7 high-level toxic heavy metals interladen in the water.
in the same year as one of the biggest sockeye runs in recent memory.
Yeah, no, everything's fine.
Oh,
Plus,
okay.
they're running out of donut holes or Tim's bits at Tim Hortons, so that's a much bigger.
Burger King just bought Tim Hortons, I think.
That may be a good thing. I don't know.
I don't know.
I love me some Timbits.
Yeah.
Never had.
Well, essentially, they're donut holes, but they're
That's exactly
round.
what they are. Donut holes are also round.
Right.
I've
They're
had
called
donut-
they're called Timbits.
I've had donut holes, just generic brand, you know.
They weren't Canadians.
The ones you get at the gas station here at Duval, the Texaco.
Safeway.
Oh.
Well, do you know where your donut holes come from?
I never
Oh.
asked. I have blind faith.
That they're coming from a sustainable source.
Yeah.
Sustainable donut holes. Next
You know,
episode.
you look at those donut holes that are as big around as a tater tot or a golf ball, and you think, that must have been a gigantic donut if that's the plug that came out of the hole. I think they're actually making those and just marketing them as donut holes.
So they're
It's-
artificial. Donuts.
yeah, and we don't know if they're sustainable donuts where the holes are coming from. It's all marketing.
Seeing the donuts at the bakery thing at the Duval Farmers Market, they're like the size of my head.
Those
never-
are called elephant ears, aren't they?
No, these are donuts.
And your head
They're
is big.
My head
At
is.
least from the side.
Yeah, because I've been doing river snorkeling a lot lately and had to. I ordered the largest scuba hood that I could find to keep my noggin warm, and I couldn't. I got it barely on my head, and it was like cutting off my circulation, and had a panic attack trying to pull it off. I almost suffocated, and so I had to call the company and be like, "All right, I ordered your extra large, and it's way too small. Like, do you have something bigger that you don't advertise?" And they're like, "Actually, we do," and they sold me like they're 4X large, and I can fit that on my head.
Damn, it's got its own solar system.
Yeah.
Heat down.
I think it was Kirk that said, like, I get in the river to snorkel and I can cause flooding. It displaces enough water to push the river over its banks.
Yeah. Well, that was pretty cool. You posted that one video a week or so ago.
No, I didn't post it. The guy I went with did, but I was in it. I was
You
the
were-
star of the video.
You were the star. You were bobbing in a freestone river.
That sounds cool.
Getting all excited, pointing out a bull trout that we swam by. It was
Yeah.
a big old bull trout, like a big old 25-incher.
Ooh.
Learned a lot of cool things about the river. You'd be surprised what lies under the surface. Learned that even though like I fish these rivers all the time and have never really caught a whitefish out of that system, every single pool has like 100 whitefish in it. Every single one. Some of them big too. There's some big old whiteys and they're trophies.
Like, don't there be people targeting them?
That's fine. I think there's enough to go around.
Any weirdities did you see? Like a dead body or...
A dead beaver.
Oh.
Yeah,
What color was it?
I couldn't tell.
Was it underwater?
Yeah, it was underwater, caught on a log jam.
Oh.
Wild
So-
caught?
Yeah,
Wild caught beaver.
Did it stink?
I wasn't really sniffing underwater. I didn't inhale.
Oh, yeah, well, that's probably good.
Yep.
Did you touch it?
No, the guy I was with did though. I don't know what he grabbed its tail.
Did you get swept into the log jam?
No, I avoided it.
That's good.
Yep, I did not suffer that. The thing is, the beaver you'd think would be the one to pull that off, but
Probably dead before it got there.
no. Yeah, that's true. Well, should we go to break and then talk about the things and the other stuff that we were going to talk about today?
Sounds
Sure.
good.
So what's up first? Are we going to talk about sustainable seafood, or are we going to talk about
We are going to talk
guides?
about sustainable seafood in Alaska.
All right. So who's our first guest?
Sue Williams
Asplund.
Asplund.
All right.
And she'll tell us her title and so forth when she comes on, but that's who we're going to first.
Sounds good. Cool. All right. We're going to go to break. Kirk, where do you plan on going? Just going to get that out of the way now.
The break room.
All right. The break room.
Yeah.
Cool.
Are there donut holes in the break
I was
room?
just going to say we're low on donut holes, so break might be cut short.
If anybody wants to send sustainable donut holes to the studios of the Open Fly, we'll enjoy them on the air.
Yeah. Cool.
And some chocolate milk, eh?
Yeah. All right. We'll be back in a few minutes.
This is Derek, and on behalf of Stream Tech Boats, I want to talk to you about 3 factors that I consider really important when you're choosing a drift boat, and that's safety, fun, and performance. These are the safest drift boats around to float out of. They're fun to row, and from a performance standpoint, if you're a professional on the water, all 3 of these factors are important. So let's take a second to hear from the man who designed the boat himself.
I tried pretty much everything, but just none of them were really doing what I wanted. So we set out to design a boat. I'd call it the one boat that would maneuver like the hard boats, that would go into really rough places, that would float high, that would have all the amenities that come on a hard boat with anchor systems and good leaning. A very nice flat floor that you can inflate hard, that you can stand on. No bolts, no nuts, no pins, no clips, nothing to put it together. For the reasons that it's so good for fishing, it got this rocker, and so it pivots quickly, and it slides out on the foam pile when you come off big drops. That rocker just climbs right out on the foam pile. A total game changer.
So there you have it. My recommendation, Link's words. Look for us at www.streamtechboats.com. Call Link directly. He'll answer that phone, and he'll get you on your way towards the best drift boat on the market.
Now back to the open fly.
All right, welcome back from break. Derek.
That was your break, guys.
That was
Fantastic.
One of the better ones.
It was. Yeah, it rated up there.
Yeah.
There was no donut holes, though, so that was the one thing.
Well, maybe we can talk about
room for improvement.
We can talk about donut holes with our guest as well today, as well as seafood in Alaska. So,
yep.
Well, everyone, welcome to the show. We have the executive director of the Bristol Bay Regional Seafood Development Association.
Is there an acronym for that?
Her name is Sue Aspeland, and welcome to the show.
Thanks. I'm not sure I had enough coffee yet this morning to keep up with you guys, but I will try.
We'll talk more slowly.
This is me on coffee, and if you want to see me off coffee, it's...
I've been drinking rye whiskey all morning, so I don't know. It should be a little bit slower, I think.
Yeah.
So, Sue, are you up in Alaska?
Actually, I'm on Lummi Island in the San Juans.
I knew that.
You're just a short swim away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come swim up the Snoqualmie to Duval.
So is it safe to say that you work remotely from home, or do you have to travel to Alaska from time to time?
Oh, no, I go to Alaska a fair amount.
Daily commute.
I used to commercial fish up there, and so this job's near and dear to my heart.
Excellent.
My daughter still fishes up there.
What was your job in the commercial fishing?
I owned and operated 2 set-net permits in the Bristol Bay salmon fishery.
Oh, wow.
Well, you do.
Yeah.
You know the issues facing the area. Then how not a personal question, but as a executive director of your organization, how do you feel about the Pebble Mine?
It's got to be stopped. It absolutely poses too great a risk to the world's largest sockeye fishery, so it's got to be stopped.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, from your tell us about the if you can speak on behalf of the commercial fisherman, the average Joe on the street there. What does stopping the Pebble Mine mean to the average guy that works for a fishing company up there in Alaska, in Bristol Bay?
Well, in a lot of cases, our fishermen, our organization represents the drift fishermen, of which there are 1,863 skippers, and each one of them hires 3 to 5 crew members every summer. So we represent a lot of folks. In addition to that, there are over 1,000 set netters who also have a couple crew members each, and the vast majority of fishermen are multi-generational, have fished in the bay, pretty much their whole lives, and most of them see this as too great a risk, that there just are some places on Earth, some allege no place on Earth that this kind of mining should be allowed to occur, but certainly not in the headwaters of some of the world's greatest world-class recreational fisheries, thousands of years of subsistence fisheries that have gone on, and 130-year sustainable commercial fishery. So folks feel pretty strongly, especially after Mount Poly, that just demonstrated so vividly that nobody can assure that these mines are going to be safe and will not affect our fisheries.
But didn't they tell us that the
it's gonna be okay
tailing ponds would be okay this time?
It'll be different, we promise.
They certainly did. Mike Peisold, who built Sales Mount Poly tailings dam, is also who Pebble contracted with to design their three tailings dams.
How does he keep getting work?
I don't know. Until a couple of Fridays ago, on Pebble Limited Partnership's website, they were touting these dams in BC as examples of modern mining technology, and proof that they could be developed safely. So I think somebody's got some egg on their face right now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Have they changed their story yet? Have they made any kind of comment after that whole ordeal?
I haven't heard directly from Pebble about that. Knight Peisold said, well, that's not our fault. We built the thing, but we weren't the engineer of record after 2011, and it's the way they're operating. But
this time it'll be different.
Yeah. Just the fact that Pebble pulled that off of their website was pretty indicative that they understood that
that's
perhaps
bad.
that claim couldn't be made anymore.
Yeah. I mean, you hate for the Canadians to take one for the team, but that Mount Poly disaster was the best thing that could have happened for the opponents of Pebble, I think.
Well, in a bad way.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have been better if we could have accomplished it without the Fraser system getting screwed, but...
Yep, well, exactly.
I don't like your attitude, Kirk.
Yeah.
I don't like your attitude, Evan. I like Derek's attitude.
Yeah, well, it's a whiskey attitude. Is it fishing season? Oh, go ahead.
Did you guys see the press yesterday and today that Imperial Metals is upping the estimate of the releases from the tailings dam failure up by 70%?
Yeah. Ouch.
No es bueno.
No es bueno.
And, I mean, it's not just a Canada issue. I mean, the Fraser dumps into the Salish Sea, and those currents, the tidal currents, pull down into the Puget Sound as well. So eventually that sediment from the Fraser is going to wash down into our estuaries and things of that nature. So that's bad.
That's bad.
Okay.
Yeah. Is it commercial fishing season right now in Alaska, Sue?
The Bristol Bay season's pretty much wound down. They may be still fishing for some silver salmon over in Togiak District, but so the bay's almost wrapped up. But other areas in Alaska still have quite a few active sockeye and pink and chum seasons still going on.
So, has it been a successful season in terms of sockeye there in Bristol Bay, or?
Yeah, it was huge. The run came in about 14 million over what Alaska Department of Fish and Game forecasts. So most of that came to the Kwiak, which is one of the two systems at the headwaters of which is where the Pebble Mine would be located. And, the place was just absolutely littered with fish all summer long.
14 million over the forecast. That's forecasting fish returns is harder than forecasting the weather.
Yeah, that margin of error, I'd be happy with that just as the run of fish anywhere here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Actually, it'd be bad if we had like 14 million pink salmon in the Skykomish. That would be messy.
Yeah,
that would be real messy. I mean, 2 million is a little bit much for me, but
those people need jobs working for my bank.
Yeah,
I could use an extra 14 million in my bank account.
Yeah, or in the Open Fly Bank account. Think what we could do with that.
Yeah, I wasn't being selfish. Sorry,
we wouldn't have to do the boiling water challenge.
The chocolate milk challenge.
Sorry, Sue.
We digress a little bit. So where does that fish end up?
Which fish?
A lot of it ends up in the domestic market. A year like this, normally on sort of an average year, about half of it ends up in the fresh frozen market, and about half is canned this year because the processors weren't expecting this magnitude of run. More of it went into the can. Can market primarily goes to the United Kingdom, but back when I fished the bay, it was 100% going to Japan, and folks have really made a lot of efforts to diversify the marketplace and not have to depend on that market. So they're distributed more easterly than westerly these days.
So the British are eating canned sockeye salmon?
Oh, the British have been huge consumers of canned sockeye salmon for a really, really long time.
I like canned salmon. It's good.
Yeah.
Well, I can my own. I catch a ton of fish on my own, and actually I canned a bunch of fish last week. Caught some hatchery steelhead out of one of our rivers and canned it up, and it's good. Everybody was looking at me funny. I tell them I can the fish. Like, why do you can it? Like, because it's awesome. Thanks, Kirk. I don't know. I think it's a great way to preserve and eat fish.
How much of that fish stays locally there in the Alaskan economy, or the places that it's caught?
How much of it does? Is that the question?
Yeah, how much of it does, or does it?
Most of it doesn't. The Bristol Bay residents and the people that fish in the bay mostly take their own home packs, so that's how they access their own fish. But very little of it stays in Alaska. Most of it goes
if you lived
away.
if you lived in the Bristol Bay area, why would you buy fish?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's a stupid question, Derek.
What's a stupid question?
Wow, I don't like your attitude, Evan.
Kidding. This is Pick on Derek Day.
No fair.
So, $14 million over the forecasted return for the sockeye. How can there be such a margin of error like that? I mean, what wasn't being accounted for with the original forecasts?
I don't think Fish and Game finished its evaluation of that. They're just the Kvichak was just way more productive than they had anticipated. So I honestly don't know if there's been any postseason analysis yet. I haven't heard any speculation.
Did the other salmon species I'm sorry, go ahead.
Those runs are just so huge and in general, and they're just really highly variable, especially the Kvichak system's really variable. So it's just like Christmas every year when you go back to fish to the bay because you're never quite sure.
So the other species of salmon, did they also have large returns this year?
King salmon were on the low end of average. The silver run and the Nishigat came back like gangbusters, so that was really strong. Chum, it wasn't the pink salmon year. Chum, I haven't really heard about. They're kind of caught corollary to the sockeye fishery. There's not a targeted fishery on them anymore.
I just read the paper yesterday that the U.S. government just purchased something like $12 million worth of pink salmon. Did you guys read that at all in the paper?
Is it like a subsidy?
I don't know.
I've read no such thing.
So,
yeah, last year's pink salmon catch in Southeast Alaska was off the charts, and so that huge backlog of canned salmon was really gumming up the marketing works for pink salmon.
So with the vast numbers of salmon that return to Southeast Alaska and whatnot, I mean, it's just a healthy environment. So are these all the salmon runs considered quote unquote sustainable, or only some of them considered sustainable due to numbers?
No, we're struggling in Alaska with king salmon runs. When you guys have strong runs down here, historically we've had weaker runs, but what's been going on the last several years up there is a little lower than the norm for what you'd expect from the vacillations between you guys having fish and Alaska having fish. And the state government has invested a bunch of money in trying to figure out why that's the case, and are pretty certain that it's ocean conditions. But the Kuskokwim and Yukon king salmon runs have been not in great shape. I don't think anybody's calling them unsustainable yet, because the fisheries are really severely restricted in order to assure that there's adequate escapements. But those are definitely on the low end of what the department is comfortable with.
Do you think it has anything to do with the Columbia River explosion of kings in the last couple of years? Because the Columbia River went from like 500,000 fish a year to now it's pushing like 1.6 million.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's part of that phenomenon that I was just talking about.
So,
where you guys have more favorable ocean conditions.
Yeah, it's been a very steep incline on the king salmon, but it's only the Columbia, because any of our Puget Sound king fisheries or Olympic Peninsula don't seem to be seeing the same increase. So it's crazy.
That kind of begs that question. I mean, once a salmon gets out into the ocean, it's really, really difficult to tell exactly which watershed or its natal stream where it comes from. So once it gets into that big pool of fish that's out there in the ocean, you can't tell if that's a Columbia River fish, or if it's a Sacramento River fish, or if it's a Canadian fish, or
the Canadian fish have an accent,
or they toad along their donut holes.
Yeah.
So once all those fish are out there in Southeast Alaska, is it easy? I mean, does the commercial fishery out there, is that considered to be sustainable at this point in terms of how that's pursued in terms of a sustainability aspect.
Because they're fishing an area with a lot of fish, like a lot of kings, but it's a mixed stock. So how do you differentiate what's sustainable about that and what's not?
Yeah, well, at least, yeah.
Are you talking about in Southeast Alaska?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, those fisheries, at least in Alaska, are really heavily regulated, as you guys are aware, by the Pacific Salmon Commission, and there's a lot of coded wire tagging certainly done in Alaska and on the Columbia. I know from attending a fisheries meeting, a 5-state fisheries meeting last week that I did, that the federal government wants to cut funding for the coded wire tag program, well, BPA in the federal government, and we're really concerned about that in Alaska because that's how we tell what fish are what when they're being harvested in Alaska fisheries. So they've been sustainably managed. If that goes through and they're no longer marked, then I think that creates some real issues for knowing what's what.
So back up just so I understand clearly, what's the identification system? Did you say a tagging system?
Yeah, coded wire tag. It's just
Okay.
each fish as they're coming out of the Columbia is marked with a little coded wire tag in its nose, as I understand it. And then those fish are sampled in the Alaska fisheries so that we have a good idea of what's being caught and where they're coming from and whether or not we're over the treaty numbers and that kind of thing. And that dictates when there's openings and closures in Alaska for those fish.
So let's change gears a little bit and go back up from Southeast Alaska back up into Bristol Bay. And when most people think of Bristol Bay, I know we've had Kim Egdorf on the show and Camille, sorry,
it's her daughter.
Yeah, and one of the most striking images I think this kind of resonates really, really well with the about Bristol Bay and the Pebble Mine campaign is there's a picture of her holding a bright red sockeye in that fishery, and that's kind of a rallying point for this issue. So outside of Bristol Bay, though, what's the state of the of Alaska fisheries in terms of that sustainability point? Has Bristol Bay been a good thing in terms of public awareness and sustainability in Alaska, or is there still work to be done there?
I think that folks generally recognize that the Alaska brand, that any fish that's coming from Alaska is sustainable, and part of that is that at statehood, what the primary reason for statehood was to get out from under federal control of management of the fisheries, because Alaskans felt like the feds were just running it to ground. And so sustainability was actually written into the Alaska Constitution in Article 8, and which presents an interesting dichotomy for governors and legislators that are contemplating something like Pebble Mine, because, in my mind, how can you even think about something like that when you're required by Alaska's Constitution to manage for sustainability? So that sustainability has been front and foremost in the minds of fisheries users and managers in Alaska since 1959 at statehood. And so we kind of get a chuckle when organizations like Marine Stewardship Council come in and start touting sustainability, because it's something that we've been doing since the beginning of statehood. And I think most folks that are at all aware about Alaska's fisheries recognize that that's just a feature of its management system, how we do business up there.
Mm-hmm. So, in Alaska, seafood is big business. It's written into the way that the state is run.
Absolutely. It's the second largest private sector employer after oil and gas in value, and the largest private sector employer in terms of numbers and of people being involved in the industry. So it's huge. And in so many of the rural parts of the state on the coast, it's like the only thing that's there. It is the economic driver, and that certainly is the case in Bristol Bay.
So there's a lot of value in, when the average consumer goes to the grocery store, there's a lot of value in seeing, Alaskan caught or Alaska wild fish. It's a big value add for the state, right, and for the commercial fisheries up there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when they say, the Alaskan brand, when they say it's Alaskan caught, those are fish caught from Alaskan waters, but are they necessarily fish that are of an Alaskan origin? Couldn't they be a free roaming fish from farther south that happened to be caught in Alaskan waters? Or are we talking about? Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
They could be. Certainly, it's acknowledged that in the southeast troll fisheries that some of those are from the Pacific Northwest, but that's all part of the Pacific Salmon Treaty allocations. But when you get outside of southeast, you can be pretty darn sure that if it's caught in Alaska, particularly for salmon, it's Alaska-bound salmon just because of the way that our fisheries are managed to try to target fishes they're returning to their natal streams. There are a couple of exceptions to that, but they're still Alaska fish. It's just the fish may be bound from they're caught in one area and bound for another area. But again, that's all recognized in the allocations of the fish so that everybody knows where those fish are headed to, and they're tightly managed so that they don't affect escapements in the terminal streams.
So commercial fishing in southeast Alaska that may involve the harvest of fish destined for another river farther south, do those have different regulations and catch limits than fish farther north?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
So
again, that's all part of the Pacific Salmon Treaty.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
So so let's just talk about labeling really quick, because a lot of our listeners are from around the country, from around the world, and when they go to the grocery store and they buy salmon, what does it mean? What are the current labeling requirements? So when you see a fish that's marketed or labeled as Alaska caught versus Alaska wild, how do you tell when you go to the grocery store that you're getting a product of Alaska that's an actual salmon that was caught there?
Well, I think the best, there really isn't adequate labeling as far as we're concerned, because we're aware of instances where unscrupulous marketers have branded as Alaskan caught or wild caught salmon that aren't, and FDA is trying to crack down on those. It comes down to knowing your marketplace and the relationship that you have with your seafood buyer. That's just critically important. So, unfortunately, until the federal government is willing to have stricter label of origin and or country of origin and chain of custody labeling, I don't know that people can be secure if they don't know who their buyers are. Yeah,
is it reasonable to say that? One of the reasons why that isn't happening is probably because it keeps the price of fish down, or at its current state, or would it make it that much more expensive to really know exactly where your fish were coming from?
It could make it more expensive. That's certainly something that we've heard from some of the processors, but I think it's at a larger scale than just seafood. I think there's been pushback from the food industry as a whole about labeling, and it's been really hard to try to just say, well, just do it for seafood. So, yeah, cost is a factor, but there are bigger factors at play at the corporate level that I don't even begin to understand.
So within the Alaskan brand, you've got the Copper River brand, which everybody knows regionally and internationally it's huge. People become rabid for Copper River fish when they hit the marketplace. I would imagine that brand has to be protected even more intensely than generally an Alaskan brand. Is that correct?
That is correct. I actually used to work for the Fishermen's Association in Cordova when we were in the infancy of developing that brand, and I was scanning the newspaper one day and, saw an ad for Copper River coho, and sitting on the Copper River, I knew darn good and well there hadn't been a coho fishery, and did some research and found out that they were Ugashic coho from Bristol Bay, and contacted Department of Environmental Conservation and FDA, and at that point they said because those fish were being marketed and sold in Alaska and weren't crossing state lines, FDA couldn't do anything about it, and we just kind of ran into a wall trying to, protect the Copper River brand. But yeah, it's a huge issue for the seafood industry and for the food industry as a whole, and the public if they want to know what the source of their food is.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and it'd be a very difficult thing to police force. I mean, you can't chase down every label that may be misrepresenting what they've got in their package.
Right.
Do you have a SWAT team that goes covert and actually?
No, but we might be hiring. Are you interested?
Yes, I'd be interested in that. As long as I have
some of our individual fishermen, some of the direct marketers have started affixing these ARFID tags, and I don't know what the acronym stands for, but it's some little magic tag that says, when read, it says your fish was caught by this fisherman on this day in this fishery, and it's attached to the flesh in a way so that it doesn't come off before it gets to the consumer, and that's been really successful on a small scale, and there are definitely consumers that really, really like that and are seeking that out.
It's like the seafood version of like when you go to the kind of hippie restaurants and you can order the chicken that had a name from the local farm.
Yeah, Fred, the chicken.
This chicken came from the farm down the street. His name was Fred. Here's a little story about Fred, and then Fred comes out on the plate.
So obviously that practice of those little tags is only in a small scale fishery operation, correct? I mean, you're not going to get the big, large scale companies doing that.
Mm-hmm. No.
So,
no.
Sue, do you know Riley Starks?
I do.
Yeah, he lives in your neck of the woods. It looks like.
Yep.
And he is doing what's called reef netting.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a practice that is done up in Alaska as well? That looks like that practice is being touted as fairly sustainable. Is that something on a small scale that works in Alaska, or is that being done there?
It's only being done down here, and I used to work for the Alaska Department of Fish and Game. I just retired after 11 years in January from them, and we've got a couple of fisheries that, after having gone out on their reef nets this summer, I think it would be really great to try to implement. But part of that whole thing at statehood that the feds were allowing, that the state wanted to see stopped, was fish traps, because they were indiscriminate and just took everything in huge amounts. And so there have been some really novel experimental ideas in fisheries that have been put forward, but many of them have been the government's been advised by the Attorney General that it too closely resembles fish traps. But that's something, the use of reef nets is something that I'm currently exploring with ADF&G for some of these, like the Kenai River, for example, where king salmon are not doing well. They're caught in small numbers in the set net fishery, and when you're caught in a gill net, they're not easily released so that they'll live. And I keep thinking, well, maybe if we tried reef nets there, because they can be completely released unharmed. So yeah, it's interesting trying to see if that might work in Alaska.
Yeah, the way that fishery is described is that there's a restaurant that's within eyesight of where these reef nets are, and as I understand, he walks up out of the water, starts making people drinks, and shows them the wild fish they just caught there in the water, and serves it up to them right there in the restaurant. So kind of a very small scale and sustainable value added kind of service to the fish consumer, who most people get their fish and their salmon from a grocery store probably these days.
Right.
Yeah. So we have a bit of a statistic we wanted to bring up, and we have it written down here. We don't have any kind of source attached to it, so we want to find out if there's any validity to this. Derek, did you want to read it, or you want me to do it? Yeah, it's a pretty bold claim, and based on what you're telling me so far, it sounds like I don't know how accurate it is, but if I had a source attached to it, it might be carry a little more weight. But Derek, go ahead and read that so we can figure out, because we kind of danced around it, but we haven't asked us specifically.
Hold that up to the mic so that Sue can see it.
Yeah, there we go.
So the number is that for every 100 Chinook caught in Alaska, less than 4 are native to Alaska, yet all 100 will be sold as wild Alaskan Chinook. The rest of those fish coming from other places across the West Coast. So how does the relationship between how does California and Oregon and Washington and Canada, or is that part of that? Where you said there was a
Pacific Salmon Treaty.
Yeah, Pacific Salmon Treaty. Is that all kind of folded into that it's because of Alaska has written into their statehood that sustainability is part of the plan? Is that why it's marketed that way, or is there something that's different there?
Well, first of all, I really doubt that statistic, because in terms of numbers of fish, the Kuskokwim River is the largest Chinook salmon fishery in the state, or was until the last couple of years. The Nushagak was the next largest, and those aren't anywhere near Southeast Alaska, and I don't have numbers of kings caught in the Southeast Alaska fishery, but I just would find it incredulous if those numbers are anywhere near close to the numbers of king salmon caught in the Nushagak and Kuskokwim commercial fisheries. So if you do find the source, I would like to grounds truth that.
Yeah, where did we get this?
I think that's inaccurate.
Yeah, like I said, I'm always skeptical of any bold claim I get that doesn't have a source attached to it. But this is this is an officially released statistic from an organization that was given to us. Is that right, Derek? We don't have to point fingers or anything, but there in the print there's no source. So
no study or anything. Yeah,
this statistic is being circulated, but I just wanted to find out if there was any chance that there was any accuracy to that.
No, I think it'd be responsible of us to
look into
the source and find out. Yeah,
because that's what I was reading it, and I tried to check to see if there was a source attached to it, and there's not. So
there's no source to it. But I think it speaks to what we've already talked about, is that there is a very significant brand when it comes to Alaska and its seafood, and the consumer sees a wild Alaskan cod or a wild Alaska fish, and that draws a lot of attention. So there's from that standpoint, Bristol Bay and the Pebble Mine campaign has been very, very good public relations tool for Alaska fisheries, I would imagine, right, Sue?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I mean, it sucks when you have, any PR is good PR, whether it's bad or good, but you have situations like this, Mount Poly mine, and it all ends up helping, but sometimes it takes a lot of short-term and devastating pain to get a long-term gain out of this issue. So hopefully we're on our way towards sustainability from that standpoint. So maybe there's a new version of sustainability that needs to come out. Yeah. A sustainability 2.0 or something.
Cool. Do we need to? I think we kind of touched on all the things and everything. Or
what else? Yeah. What else do you want our listeners to know, Sue, about what you're doing and how they can support either the Pebble Mine campaign? There's an important date coming up, right, for Bristol Bay?
Yep. September 19th is the end of the public comment period on the EPA's 404C restrictions, which in our analysis would make the Pebble Mine uneconomic and therefore probably not buildable. The comments have to be received by midnight on the 19th, so if folks are mailing comments in, they need to factor that in. Trout Unlimited is one of our big partners on this, and we all have got websites that help folks navigate the process. We've got some draft template letters that can be personalized and just submitted directly to EPA through our websites, and those sites are bristolbaysockeye.org or fishermenforbristolbay.org, and TU's is savebristolbay.org. We just really encourage folks to weigh in. If EPA isn't successful in getting this wrapped up before the new Congress. There's a great chance if the Democrats lose the Senate in Congress, there's already legislation in the House and the Senate this session. I found out yesterday that the House is going to be taking it up in the next, when it comes back into session this month, and it'll likely pass the House. Luckily, because of the Democratic majority in the Senate, it won't pass the Senate, we don't think. But if we get into the new Congress, then it's very likely that Congress will act to restrict the EPA's ability to do what it's currently trying to do. So it's absolutely critical that people weigh in by the 19th so we can get this thing done before we might lose the Democratic Senate in the next Congress.
Well, we're not telling you how to vote, but we're telling you how to vote.
It sounds like if you like to eat wild Alaskan seafood, then you need to be voting in favor of stopping this thing.
In favor of the restrictions. Yeah, we did some interesting infographics that I can only tell you about because we're not on video, but
just hold it up to the
just hold it up to the phone.
People can see it.
A couple of them are, if you were to put all of the tailings from the Pebble Mine into a perfect sphere like a globe, the volume of the Pebble Mine tailings would be 4.6 trillion liters, and compare that to the volume of Mount Everest, which I think everybody knows is really vast, and it is only 2.4 trillion liters.
Oh my!
That one really got me. And then the other one was that the Pebble Mine would produce enough toxic waste for every man, woman, and child on Earth to receive 1.5 tons of waste.
Well, that's
staggering statistics.
It sounds like that mining waste is sustainable. There's enough to go around for an awful long time.
Yeah, that's true. Thanks, Kirk.
Yeah.
That's good. Sue, thank you very much for your time and for the work you're doing on behalf of the commercial fishery up there. I know that's an important part of the economy, and it's been an important part, and certainly the messaging for helping with Bristol Bay and stopping Pebble Mine. So thanks for coming on today.
Final question for you, Sue.
Yeah. Sure.
You've got an allegiance to Alaska. You live in Washington. You walk into a restaurant. You sit down. Do you order Alaskan salmon or Washington beef for dinner?
Ooh, good question.
Salmon.
Okay. All right.
Well, see you later.
I'm here for you.
You could do a surf. You could do a surf and turf.
Yeah.
Touche.
I haven't been here for a year yet. That might change.
Okay.
A fillet and a fillet.
There you go.
No.
All right.
All right. Thanks again, Sue. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
All right. So,
Okay.
how about that?
Yeah, that's quite the issue.
That's a
big job.
whole thing.
That's a big job she's got. Mm-hmm. Executive Director of the Bristol Bay Regional Seafood Development Association.
Wow.
Yeah.
Learning all kinds of things.
I'd actually like to get on that SWAT team that hunts down the violators of the Alaskan brand.
Yeah.
That'd be fun, wouldn't it?
I could see you doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, right now your arms are folded like Chuck Norris.
Oh, I'll get salmon tattoos on my guns.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Be like that. I don't even know if it was serious or not. That thing that was going around a month or two ago. That Washington vigilante group called HOG.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I thought about that.
Harvest-oriented.
Harvest-oriented guides or harvest-oriented something. Sportsmen called HOG, and they like dress up in ghillie suits and hide in the bushes and
they
go out and pull guns on snaggers.
Yeah, and they operate their own hatcheries.
Oh yeah, there's a couple things I was like, that's kind of cool, and then there are other ones like operating their own hatcheries, and I was like, not so cool.
Yeah, and they meet at the strip clubs. if you're new to the organization, the first lap dance is on HOG. Seriously though, if there is an organization, and I guess you'd have to go to a meeting to find out if they truly exist, but if there's somebody out there from HOG, and you can validate the group,
come onto the show.
Get a hold of us. We'll have you on.
Actually, I think that'd be kind of funny.
I think it'd be awesome.
I think it would be. I mean, I certainly don't agree with 99% of what they do, but It would boost the ratings.
The premise of what the alleged group is doing is right on, though. They're taking up where our elected government organizations.
Right. It's not like Fish and Wildlife officers obviously are doing good work, but there's like 3 of them.
Yeah, the management of WDFW is what's fallen down.
So it's a vigilante enforcement group.
Yeah.
In the name of fish.
Mm-hmm.
And in the name of the recreational angler who's been let down by WDFW.
Jason over here in the corner, his wheels are turning.
Did you say in terms of lap dances, did you say that there was a hog on your lap, or that there was? I didn't get that part.
Oh dear.
Yeah, no, I was actually reading.
There's a place that
I was delving into the bowels of the internet, researching the existence of this hog group, and in one conversation where an alleged representative of hog said, come to a meeting if you've never been to one, and the first lap dance is on the hog.
Interpret that how you will.
Yeah.
I have vague memories of a 40 of Mickey's and someplace up on Lake City Avenue.
Rex.
Rex. Deja vu.
Yeah.
It's one of those 2.
Yeah.
Jason, what are the good ones locally?
I don't know.
All right. Now you got to go to Vancouver for that, or Portland.
Portland.
Yeah. Sassy's. Portland. That's what I've heard.
All right, well, we've got another part of the show still to do, right?
Oh, I thought we were done.
Yeah, let's go on a break.
You got to go talk to it.
I've been drinking 32 ounces of this off-colored liquid, and now I need to get rid of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're going to tell us what that off-colored liquid is?
It's green tea.
No, it is.
Yeah.
It's got a green tint to it.
It does.
Yeah. That's interesting, Derek.
Why is that interesting?
I don't know. It's just real interesting what you're drinking. It's tea.
It's green tea.
Yep.
I'm fairly disinterested myself.
It does look like urine, but I think it's because you're looking at it through urine-colored lenses.
Okay. Well, how about we go to break?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then coming back with guide stories.
Yeah, this is, we're going to be talking to a guy that works in the industry for a long time now. It's more than 10 years. And he started out as a guide, but now he's working on the business side of the fishing industry. So it's, I know a lot of people that including myself, that worked in business for a long time and then started guiding. So this is someone who has done it the other direction. So I wanted to kind of get his perspective on what he's learned as a fly fishing guide and how that's helped him succeed in business, and kind of share his story. So we'll go from there.
That's also interesting.
It is interesting.
It is interesting. Yeah. We're an interesting show.
Yeah, full of interest.
Yep. All right.
Interestability.
We'll be back after this message from our sponsors.
Now back to the open fly.
Welcome back. Derek, it's Guide Stories, your favorite part of the show.
Well, it's my part of the show, but not necessarily my favorite, because all of it's my favorite, but whatever.
How come, generally, Evan runs the conservation guest and Derek runs the guys. Why don't I get my own segment?
Well, what would it be?
I don't know.
Listener feedback is what you do.
We give you the feedback statement that happens every 3 shows.
Did we do any today?
Did we have any?
No. Well, actually, there's a guy on Twitter that's going to be upset we didn't read his email.
I don't know. Well, he didn't specify which one it is.
Well, that's for another time.
I don't know. Speaking of listener feedback, why don't you send us feedback, everybody, on what Kirk's part of the show should be? What his segment?
There you go.
I demand my own segment.
There you go. Mm-hmm. Are you going on strike now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm
holding out for better benefits.
You get free beer here, so take off.
Well, Kirk, if you get your own segment, if we come up with a good idea, I double your salary.
There you go.
Sweet. I'm all in.
Money talks.
Triple it, actually.
All right.
So let's talk with Peter Vandergrift. Peter has had his extensive guide history, and he's now working on the industry side of things. So, Peter, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Peter, is Vandergrift, is that Dutch?
That is Dutch.
Uh-oh.
That is Dutch.
Uh-oh. A lot of people know how I feel about the Dutch.
You haven't listened to our show before, have you?
So you're calling me, and I'm the Dutch punching bag here?
I'll catch
he just likes to quote Austin Powers.
Are you tall, though? Because every Dutchman that I know is like a giant human.
I'm not a giant human. I'm about 6 foot, so I feel like that's about.
That's big. Yeah. That's big from my standpoint.
That's about a foot taller than Kirk. So
I just had an excellent name for a pattern: the Dutch punching bag.
The Dutch. That would be. Yeah,
I like it.
That sounds like a dirty fly. Anyways. So we just recorded a segment with the woman who is the executive director of the Bristol Bay Regional Seafood Development Association, or BBRSDA for short. And we noticed that you started your guide career up in Alaska. So tell us about how you got started in guiding.
Well, I'd been a fly fisherman my whole life, and it kind of helped me choose my higher education calling here in Montana, and I somehow had to pay for school. And so I thought guiding was a good way to do it, and I had the opportunity through some folks that I knew to go up on the Upper Nushagak and work at a fly-out camp up there, and it was really just a great experience. And when young guys kind of approach me or folks that are into fishing and say, I really want to get into guiding, I always say that Alaska is the perfect place to do it. There's a lot of turnover in the lodges there, but, so there's always openings. And, the fishing itself isn't extremely complicated. And, through 1 year of guiding in Alaska, you'll handle more fish than you probably would in 5 years or 10 years even in the lower 48.
Well, here in Washington, everybody just learns how to guide by going on a steelhead river and catching their first steelhead and then hiring or taking on clients.
They become the experts right away.
Seriously, I'm not going to point names or anything, but there's seriously guys here that have taken like swing-only fly fishing steelhead trips, and they've caught one steelhead ever. And I know of a few different examples of that. So those guys should have gone to Alaska.
They should have gone to Alaska. They would have been able to
actually catch a fish.
Yeah, I mean, so at a young age, what's better than you're working in Alaska? You've got a shotgun slung over your shoulder and you're driving a jet boat up a little creek. I mean, it was a really, really cool experience, and kind of that sort of adventure that I continually try to find something like that where you really do feel like you're off the grid. But an incredible amount of responsibility. I think about it now, and it was knowing sort of the clientele we had. There was a lot of responsibility to keep them safe, and those sorts of things you learn as a guide. You really, being able to set up and craft a day and really being responsible for yourself and a couple other people, it can really help you, further along in your life if you end up, going the business route.
By safety, you're talking about bears, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Bears.
I'm looking at Kirk right now, and he is about 1,000 miles away because he heard shotgun over your shoulder and jet boat. And he is dreaming right now.
Yeah, that's every young man's dream.
Mm-hmm. So you were on the Nushagak, correct?
I was on the Upper Nushagak. In fact, if you all are familiar with the film Red Gold that came out a number of years ago about the Pebble Mine, Dave Egdorf is the guy I worked for, and I've known Camille Egdorf, who's now going on to do so many great things in the fly fishing world.
She's been on this show.
She's been on the show.
Yeah, we hate to toot our horn.
But we got her on way before you.
Well, so she would come into camp, a couple times a year, and this was before, she was, she must have been 5 or 6. She was a really young little girl, and she would come in, and we had these rainbows out in front of camp, and no one was allowed to fish for them, but you would throw your food scraps over. So after about a month of that, we'd have a line of about 20 fish deep. The smallest one of them was going to be about 9 or 10 pounds. And so we loved when she came to town came into the camp, because she was the only person able to fish for them, and so we get to see these giant fish that we may not see in a couple weeks of guiding out there.
Mm.
Nice.
Kirk is still dreaming. He's thinking about a 10-pound fish that he'll probably
Yeah, Kirk's like raving about this 20-incher he lost at the net the other day.
I'm still thinking about shotguns and jet boats, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But, so that's kind of how I got my start. And I worked up there for 3 seasons and, was able, a lot of really talented guides came through that camp, a lot of whom are still in the industry today. There's a guy, Dale Sexton, who preceded me there, who lives in Livingston, and he's been guiding the park and worked at Dan Bailey's and opened a hiking shop there in Livingston. There's Charlie Kahn, who's gone on to be a preeminent guide in Mongolia and in the Amazon, and that's just the folks that were there in those 3 years. It's a brotherhood when you're in a camp like that, because there's only a handful of people that know exactly what you went through. Pretty special place, and I'd have to say I'm really excited to see that the AK Sportsman Alliance and Scott Head were able to do such good work with stopping the pebble mine. It looks like that's actually one of those conservation causes that we get to celebrate a victory on.
Mm-hmm. So you're not opposed to the pebble mine, or you are?
Oh, of course, opposed to the pebble mine.
What kind of question is that, Kirk?
No, I was just wondering if maybe there was a chance we'd have the one person in the world that actually supports the pebble mine.
I think Derek guided that guy.
Yeah,
we were talking that one day when
I did have that guy.
I think Derek finds mid guide day that his client is a pebble mine supporter.
Yeah.
And
that's when you want that shotgun.
That's why I bought that shotgun.
It was like, and he saw your sticker and he's like, "Oh, you're one of those guys."
Yeah, he asked me for some water, and I handed him one of those aluminum reusable bottles, because I don't use plastic bottles in the river. And
you being a good steward.
Had a Pebble Mine sticker on. And he goes, "Oh, you're one of those, huh?" So that was about where that day went.
Yeah. Wow. Yes, I'm one of those.
Yeah, that's when I cut the hooks on his. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not what I meant to say. Yeah. So from Alaska, you went on to guide in Montana. I mean, talk about going to the easy places to catch fish, huh? Come on, bud.
Yeah. Well, so, Montana, I went on to guide in Missoula for a number of years, I guess, I'm thinking 9 or so. Mm-hmm. And then I started my own outfitting business, and I started that in Livingston, Montana, kind of hopped the divide, and, right there on the banks of the Yellowstone. And, the experiences that I think Missoula has some of the most talented guides in the country. It's a little different fishery for a number of reasons. The fish counts aren't really very high in Missoula, but there's tremendous opportunity as far as different types of water. I mean, you've got the Blackfoot, and you've got the Bitterroot, and you've got the Clark Fork. These are 3 rivers with completely different identities, and to be a successful guide, you have to have a bag of tricks, as big as a minivan in order to get it done, where other fisheries, you just kind of, all right, we're going to put on an indicator and nip down the middle of the river. Well, you just don't do that in Missoula. Mm-hmm. I don't ever remember running a full nymph rig guiding here for 9 years.
Oh, look at you.
Hopper dropper. And I would say I'm not alone. There's nothing, special about me. I mean, hopper dropper a lot and swinging big streamers and things like that. But full nymph rig, we just didn't do it. We were not in the tailwater. Freestone, you're just more effective a lot of times fishing those shallow runs.
Yeah.
So.
I can say, I've spent a fair amount of time in Missoula as of late. My daughter's going to school there now. She just started her freshman year there.
Oh, right on.
And, walking into the shops in Missoula, I think the one thing I noticed the most is really the lack of people's egos.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like a very ego-building place, even though they have the fisheries that you could build a pretty big ego on.
I think you're right. And one thing I think can be a misconception too is that people with those big egos, they don't last in any fly fishing community. Mm-hmm. We're as a group, I just feel like you can go anywhere in the world to a fly fishing lodge, and you're going to have instant companionship with anyone there, not even a lodge, just a different destination, because you kind of, you've got those same values as those people. You love the outdoors, you love the adventure, you want to see what's around the next corner, you really want to challenge yourself, and you want to take care of the places you love. And I think that you can go anywhere, and that's going to be 99% of the people you meet, and then there's the 1% of the guy that wants the double mine, and that's why that's why we're armed.
There's another 1% like me that doesn't want the challenge. I want easy, stupid fish.
Yeah. See, like here in Washington, especially in the steelhead, like the young steelhead guide culture. There's so much ego that goes around, and all these guys think they're the greatest thing in the world, but they're not half as good at this as I am, and I'm like the most humble angler I know.
You just bragged.
No.
You go. Tell you what, Evan. Here's what Evan does.
Sorry, that was a poor attempt at false humility there.
So Evan goes to the grocery store ahead of time and buys those Mylar balloons that say "Get well soon," and he takes them with him to the river, and then he kills hatchery steelhead, and he puts them on the fish.
That's true. I actually did that. I have a few pictures floating around. Yeah, I really don't take myself very seriously. We fish in horse masks and monkey masks and take pictures of us with balloons on the fish.
People. So you guided for 17 years in total in terms of your guide career, right, Peter?
Yeah,
that right?
That seemed about. Let me see. So it would have been 95 to the last year I was licensed. Would have been, let's see, 2 years ago. So that's whatever year that was. 2012, so yeah, that seems about right.
So that was the last year you were licensed, but you kept guiding, correct?
I still take my dad out fishing, so that's that's more work than
it's a slippery slope, Peter. It's a slippery slope.
That's correct.
So you after you finished guiding, or maybe this was a precursor to the end of your guiding, but you worked as the guide desk manager at Sims for a while, right?
I did. So kind of my transition out of guiding, we were in, I'm married, I have a couple of kids, and this was kind of pre-kids, where there is that sort of point where you say, okay, well, is there something more? Is this going to be, how I continue my life for the next 30 years or whatnot? And that's kind of daunting. And I think a lot of guys get to that point. And, so I had started to transition out a little bit. I worked for the Livingston Enterprise newspaper when I was there, and it was a pretty sweet gig. I was a beat reporter, and I was able to file my Friday stories on Thursday, and then I would guide 3 days, and I had an outfitter's license, so I had two guides working for me, and they would be out every day. So it was a good transition. I loved being a writer. I went to school here at the University of Montana in Missoula for creative writing, and I never really used it. I'd written a few articles here and there, but I hadn't used it in a huge capacity. And I loved working at the newspaper, and it was a really incredible experience. One of the stories I like to tell is that on 2 consecutive days, I did kind of the two opposites that you can get at a paper. One day, I literally wrote the cat in the tree story, right? Like, it was a slow news day. And there was what's the fire truck doing? Oh, how quaint. It's a small town. The fire truck is actually there to get a cat out of a tree. So that was the one-day story. Then the next day was when President Obama was in Bozeman, and I was able to go and cover his speech in Bozeman and actually ask him a question. I kind of snuck back into the back room where all the media folks go, and they don't typically let local media in, but I kind of was talking to the guy. I'm like, well, I've got a media pass, and I'd like to write a story, and I had my photographer with me, and he said, well, only one of you can come through. And I said, well, she may as well go through because the picture is going to be, a lot more than any drivel I'm going to write. And the guy kind of took heart on me and sent me through. And I asked the president if he was going to, or he was not president then. I said, would he look to change all the Secret Service cars to hybrids? And he laughed and thought that was a silly question. He said, "You don't ask things of the Secret Service; they tell you." So, so that's I mean, for writing a cat in a tree story, and then the next day, I mean, and we really covered the whole span. I mean, it was during the brucellosis scare, and I did wolf coverage, and so it was a really fun time. And obviously, I did a lot of sportsman type articles about fishing and hunting and whatnot. And the way that so that was a kind of a neat deal, and I was able to sort of parlay that into working at Simms. They were starting a new position, this guide desk manager to oversee their entire pro program, and I wasn't really even looking for a job. It's kind of like when you find your wife. You're not really even looking for a girlfriend, and the perfect thing walks in. And that's kind of what happened with me and Simms, and it was a great fit. It was, I learned an awful lot. I kind of felt like I was in over my head a little bit at the beginning, just with all the, the spreadsheets and the P&Ls and the budgets and this, that, and the other. I'm like, wow, this is a lot more complicated than taking people fishing.
Didn't you have a secretary to handle that stuff while you could just focus on the cool things?
We eventually did grow it to a staff of 3, but I wouldn't be able to call any of them secretaries. I just had to take the brunt of some of the harder processes and questions and relationships. But
good answer.
It was a neat. We were really able to grow a program and really put into place what I thought was a really effective way to interface with the guide community. And as we all know, or at least as I believe, in fly fishing, when you're talking about marketing, you're talking about guides. They are the most influential person a fly fisherman will come across. If you've done any guiding and if you've been around fishermen enough, I still get calls today of people asking me my advice on rods and reels and flies and like any purchase they do. And they're always going to ask their guide first because we kind of have no skin in the game. We just like what works. I don't know if I would have taken a job with a company, and this kind of goes on to Costa, with a product I didn't believe in. And I think there has to be authentic. You have to really not only believe in the product, but believe in the company and what the company is doing. And, I think that in the fly fishing business world, that is, it can be so transparent if you're not who you say you are. So,
yeah.
So do you think that, if looking back at it, would you say that the way that you progressed into your current role as, as a culmination of what you've done, that would be the best way to do it? Or, there's certainly guys that have done it like I have that have been in business for a long time and then gone into the guiding part of it. So, what does it come down to? Is it the individual or what do you think?
I think I'm sure it's the individual to some extent, and wouldn't want to, kind of dictate. But, I think there is the adventures that you can have in your youth. You can't have, it would be hard pressed for me in my current state. Let's just say I was a hedge fund analyst, and I'm coming off of that, and I've decided, geez, I want to really go into guiding. Well, I'm not going to be able to have those experiences of leaving life and family for months on end to just adventure, to work in these lodges and to have those sorts of, your home is where you lay your head types of experiences, But by the time you're later in life, you've already kind of formulated that. At least that's my perspective on it. So I wouldn't have been able to do that. And, you can't just say, I'm going to fish every damn day that I'm not guiding. Like that's a hard nut to crack when you've got those other obligations. So I think in a lot of ways, going about it the one way. Now, the flip side of that is that if you're in it young, you eventually have to either, parlay that into something in the business that I've been able to do, or you're going to have to leave it at some point if you want to have kind of wife, kids, retirement, the whole thing. There's a very, very few people who can make a great living in the fly fishing industry. It's as a guide, you have successful outfitters and you have successful outfitter and fly shop owners, but like you're just single guide dude. You just can't do enough days. There's not enough days in the year. We can't all be. I don't know if you're familiar with Jocko Lucas, who just had that film 320 about guiding 320 days in a year, and I think I could hack that about 2 years, and then I would just pretty much die. But the other way, if you already have some financial security, and you guys see this a lot, you'll have someone who can come into the game and guide out of pure passion, where they don't have to be driven by where's my mortgage coming from. There's good and bad with that. I mean, some people don't like that because they're like, well, they don't really have to do this. But if you're driven to guide, you have to guide no matter whether it's a necessity of money or just a necessity of who you are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely it does. Yeah, hits home.
Yeah. How many kids do you have, Peter?
I have 2.
How old are they?
2 daughters. 2 and 5.
2 and 5. Oh, you're my prime market.
Do you want to give your sales pitch?
Yeah, here we go.
All of the Little Woolly Bugger. Have you ever heard of those series of books?
Yes.
Oh, right on. Okay, go buy all 3 of them, would you please?
Kirk is the author of that series of books.
There you go.
Yeah, you didn't know you were going to get interviewed by a famous author today, did you?
That's good stuff. And I'm always looking for good books for the kids that aren't about princesses. So
yeah,
I pick these up, princesses in them.
Well, the interesting thing is that when I wrote the books, I thought I'm going to give, because my kids are older, but I spent a lot of evenings reading these books that were just horrible, and kids love repetition. They wanted these horrible books read to them every night. So I thought I'm going to give dads out there something that they might actually enjoy reading. So anyway, back to you.
Well, thank you.
So your current role, tell us about what you're doing right now.
So right now, I work for Costa, obviously, and I'm called their fly community leader. So Al Perkinson, who's really the brainchild behind Costa's ascent to what it is today, is just a real visionary on marketing and how to interact with with potential clients. I think first and foremost, and one of the things that has always attracted me to Costa is there is a deep-seated, in the core commitment to conservation and to leaving the world better than you found it. And I mean, I think that is just what the sorts of things that Costa commits to, and the kind of money that we spend on these projects. Some would say it's foolish and it outweighs what the return you're going to get on your investment. We don't look at that. We look at what's right, what makes an impact. Perfect example is Project Guyana, which I don't know if you're familiar with, but kind of the Jungle Fish was the movie that we made about that. So this was a project where we found out in this village called Rewa down in Guyana, which is in South America, that this village had decided it wanted to get away from the extracted industry that most of the young men and women had to go. They had to leave the village and go, cut down trees or work in mines, or they had to poach or, do some other things that weren't really adding much to the village. They were either leaving and not coming back, or they were leaving, coming back with money, but also, bringing things like pollution. So this village decided, well, we want to change from all this, and they set up what was an ecotourism lodge, and went through a lot of pains and whatnot to get this thing up, and then no one was coming. They just didn't have that marketing machine. Well, we found out through a source that they may have some fish down there that could be called a fly rod, called an arapaima, and so we went down there to see with a team to see if these things could be caught on the fly, and sure enough, they could. And once that ball started rolling, what we did is we helped set up the infrastructure so that they could run a successful fly fishing lodge down there that's now booked out through 2016 It brings in more money to the village, that village, and actually a whole series of villages there, and has pretty much helped to turn around their way of life. Now, what did Costa get out of that? Well, we don't get a dime from anyone going to fish there. We've put a heck of a lot of money, time, and effort into it. But what we get out of that is the ability to know that we've helped save something that might have been gone from the earth. I mean, that's a pretty compelling reason to work for a company when you know they're doing things like that.
I'll feel way more awesome when I put my Costas on later.
There you go.
I've got a copy of Jungle Fish. I'm going to have to rewatch it. It's been a couple of years.
You sure that's not a copy of Jungle Fever?
Jungle Fever. Jungle Book.
Jungle Book.
Cool.
Is it an animated film?
Well, Peter, we're running out of time here, so we're going to try and wrap this up. And I mean, I don't know, we might need to get him back on the show again later because I can tell he's got even more stories.
There's some richness in there that hasn't been pulled out in this interview.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to have him on again.
Did we make the cut? Would you come on again?
I would love to come on again.
Right on.
Any sort of subject that you think I might fit, I'd be happy to come on again.
Cool.
But I would say, just sort of with the theme of the show, I think all of those things that I learned from guiding, just kind of working hard, organizing your life, having a good temperament every day that you can, and really, being steadfast with those conservation beliefs. I mean, all of those have helped me. If it is an ascension, I mean, we won't know, right, until we're all done and buried. But what seems to be has been a really, it's a great path that I've been able to weave through life, and I could have only done that through learning to fly fish from my grandfather, pursuing that dream, and then parlaying that into some of this other work that I'm able to do with Sims and now Costa.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well said.
There you go, kids.
Yeah.
Life lessons.
That's how you do it right there, kids, just like Peter did.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you, Peter, very much for your time.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you all. I'd come on anytime.
Sweet.
Well,
Cool. We'll be in touch.
What are you doing tomorrow?
We don't record tomorrow.
Oh.
I'll be in town in a couple of weeks. I'll look you up and I'll buy you a beer when I come into Missoula at the end of September.
Perfect. I'll show you around the town.
Awesome.
I'll introduce you to the new trout.
Hopper dropper.
Thanks, Peter.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. We're gonna let you go here. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks, guys. Mm-hmm. Bye-bye.
Cool. So safe to assume that Costa's on board as a sponsorship of the Open
Hell yeah.
podcast. Right on.
I don't have a pair, but I'd be willing to
I recommend
put
them.
a pair on.
I mean, we're not sponsored by them yet, but I sure do enjoy mine.
Yeah.
I do too. I'm just like we were talking about earlier. I just hate the fact that I wear prescription lenses now because those nice factory lenses, boom, they come out and something less quality goes in with my prescription. I'm going to go in for LASIK.
Can't these companies, like, I know some of the other big ones do, Costa might be able to, can't they do prescription ones themselves, like in their factory?
They may be able to.
I think they do.
Yeah.
They're pretty equipped.
Next
You might want to talk to our new friend Peter and find out if they can get you some prescription Costas with the Costa. If you buy Costas, you need the Costa lenses. That's what makes them Costas.
Yeah. Well, any glass.
If you're going to be daydreaming about jet boats and shotguns, you need to have a pretty sturdy. I mean, vision is going to be really important, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So,
Definitely.
Right on. Well,
a shotgun, you just shoot from the hip, clear the hallway. There's no aiming. It's called pointing.
That's true.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think that about covers it. Need to turn my podcasting desk back into my tying desk.
You know, the cool thing is that this is show 20, right?
Yep.
We've started out, we've been talking about Bristol Bay for a long, long time.
Yeah, almost, I don't know how long this show been around, 8 months?
I would say 25% of the episodes we talk about Bristol Bay.
We need to, a listener needs to go back and take note and find out what percentage of shows we talk about Bristol Bay.
Maybe you might win something.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We'll give him a sticker.
Tell us you're listening.
Go spend 20 or 30 some hours listening to shows and let us know how many times we mention Bristol Bay. If you get the number right, you get a free sticker.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, I know a lot of people miss our regular programming. When is it that we're going to try and shoot for?
I don't know, probably after October, because that's when things slow down again.
After October.
It'll be kind of like last year. You know, we started midwinter last year, and we were able to do it regularly through the winter because it's easier. I mean, right now, I'm in this office every day, just about. Well, I'm going to start fishing quite a bit next month. Yeah. But, I mean, I'm going to start fishing quite a bit. I'm fishing 6 days over the next 2 weeks on a river across the state, and you know, so that's hard. Derek's getting busy with guiding, and I mean, it's so challenging to get guests on this time of year.
They're busy too.
We've actually had a few shows pretty much fall through at the last minute, ones that you guys will never hear about, with guests we still want to get on eventually, where it just didn't end up happening because they're so busy this time of year. So it's going to stay like that until things cool down and people are staying indoors a little more.
Right on.
Yeah, and if you've got some ideas on things you want to hear about, maybe there's some fisheries with guides on them that you want us to talk to, then
just
please
keep it to yourself because we don't care.
Don't hotspot, no. Send some suggestions in. We don't know everybody just yet. So if there's a place you want to hear about, we'll...
We know most everybody in this industry, but... No, I'm just kidding. We don't know. Even we're nobody.
We're just small little fish.
Yeah.
In a small pond.
Yeah. All right, I need to get back to tying jigs for my center pin
I got to
setup.
go to a Seahawk party.
Yeah, me too. Actually, I don't know. Buddy Jason here is we're going to go find someplace to watch the game because I don't have the cables. I got a 60-inch flat screen TV and no way to watch a game on it.
Get satellite.
Yeah.
No, but that costs money.
Yeah.
We have money to go gallanting across the state for 6 days fishing.
That's why I don't have money for cable to watch the sports
you
ball.
need to stay home
You're
and
a dirtbag angler.
You need to stay home and watch TV more and go outside and play in the dirt less.
Right.
You know, I never thought of that.
Yeah.
Give it a shot.
I should. That's a really good idea. All right, everybody.
Get yourself a shotgun and a jet boat.
Yep, shotguns and jet boats and Alaskan salmon.
Right on. 3
and
2
boiling
1. I always wanted to do the countdown.
Yeah. Well, here we are, and we're back.
Where'd we go?
I don't think we went anywhere, Kirk. Anyway, if anybody wants to send us a video of them, what is it? Pouring boiling
chocolate milk down your shorts.
Boiling chocolate milk down your open fly.
To raise money for I can't remember what.
Evan's shoulder surgery.
Fix my nerve on my arm so I can spay cast on river left.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Here we go.
That's a real mark.
That's going viral.
Yes.
We'll get video of that. First person to send in video of that
gets a free sticker.
Gets a free sticker and a shirt.
Yeah, there you go. And I'll buy you the chocolate milk.
And I'll buy you an Allen fly rod and reel outfit.
And it's got to be chocolate milk. None of this Yoo-hoo bullshit.
Right.
Chocolate flavored water.
Right.
We'll donate a Stream Tech boat to the person.
And a sticker.
And a sticker.
All right. Before we give away the world here.
All right.
Well, everybody, thanks again. We enjoyed having you.
Yeah.
Actually, I didn't, but it sounds nice, right?
Thanks to our guests today.
Our flies are closed.
Our flies are closed.
Yeah, we're zipping them up now. All right, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.